Yeah, we are live. Welcome to the Yalla Bitcoin Breakfast Show. It's going to be a popping one today because everyone's in ecstasy, and whatever we say won't take away from the joy you're feeling right now. Let King go. Okay, welcome. We're gonna wait a little bit longer, and we're gonna. Hey, Spencer, you're here. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I apologize for the little mix-up. I'm still getting ready, used to Bitcoin daylight savings time.
Ah.
It's hot, but we're gonna get electric up over here. I'm just getting everything, set up for the stream, and we will be with you in a moment. That's a very nice background. Some artwork you have up there.
Oh, thank you.
What is that? It looks rare. Is it on chain? Can I buy it on Magic Eden?
You can't, but this is during the pandemic. I got into a collection of wrestling art, and it kind of got out of control a little bit, and here we are.
That's cool. It looks amazing. Let's see if electric is coming on. Uh, so while we chatting here, maybe tell me a little bit about how the last couple days have been for you. I mean, we all have our personal experiences. I think we all feel a bit vindicated, or a lot vindicated, both in our, to ourselves and in our immediate surroundings and in general. So, how's the last couple days been on your side?
They've been good. Obviously, I think they've been good for everybody. Definitely vindicating. I think it's one of those things where it's definitely nice to have people who haven't, been at all interested in the space or in crypto for the past, I don't know, 3 or so years, outside of maybe, once in a while, all of a sudden, calling you, and I'm sure you're getting the same thing and saying, hey, what are the things that I should be putting money behind? What's going on? uh, and all of that. So it's nice to
Yeah.
see people come out of the
Is my
woodworks.
Ripple going to make me rich? Or,
Right,
mate, dude, you haven't stole that 4 years ago, or get with the times. But
right.
I'm definitely seeing. I mean, it's definitely not a representative sample, more like anecdotal evidence. But I'm definitely seeing that increase in normies from the family. It started actually with my grandmother. She sent me a text. She's like, "Yo, is now a good time to invest?" This was on election morning, so it was like 7 in the morning my time, which is just as Trump was announced, just as he took Pennsylvania. She's ready to ape into BTC, and good for her. She's up 20% now on a week.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know. And we're all here sitting here thinking like, we've been here for years, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
But it's good to see, like, it's for me, it's good to see the vindication of our wildest dreams when we said this is going to be reserve currency. This is going to be, people used to say, why do you buy and hold Bitcoin? It's going to be banned by governments. And now not only is it not being banned by governments, it's starting to become embraced as a way to back debt-based fiat currencies. Back your liabilities as a country and back them with Bitcoin. And we're going to see this arms race start heating up with other countries trying to follow suit. And hopefully that's kind of what I want to also get your take on. We get kind of maybe do a little bit of an introduction for the crowd watching at home. Hopefully we'll get electric as well. But I wanted to get your take on, like, how does this cycle play out downstream? Because all of us are hopefully Bitcoiners. We hopefully have some Bitcoin, whatever,
mhm.
checking, following. But we're also, building in this in ecosystem, building dApps, building software, building communities, and naturally you know, these projects have tokens associated with them. So when is this kind of bull flavor going to trickle down to the low cap alt when is it going to trickle down to the new projects that are launching on something like ApeChain? So that's something I really want to dive into, to kind of get the idea of how you see where the cycle is. But why don't we just start with the introduction to you and Horizen? You guys are working on some really cutting edge ZK stuff, and not just
Mhm.
for privacy. I used to be, one of those that thought that zero knowledge, it's Monero and Zcash. I remember the Zcash days, and it was like, oh, this is a privacy technology, but it's got a
Mm.
lot of utility in scaling and in other areas as well. So we're going to be diving into that. So thank you for joining us, Spencer. So that's wonderful to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Horizon and Horizon Labs, which I'll talk about as well, obviously. Horizon is kind of, to your point, a little bit of an OG project, right? It's not as old as Bitcoin, and it's funny to call Bitcoin old, right? But at this point, it's been a little while, but it's almost as, right? It's from a vintage where it's been through now multiple cycles and stuck around. It's sort of been here over a number of years and gone through a number of transition periods. And you're right, originally it was a privacy coin. I think that the privacy coin narrative is one that doesn't exist today quite in the way that it used to be. But there are things that do come from that we still have today, including, sort of the first use cases of zero knowledge activity. I think that Zen, which is Horizon's token, was the third ZK project basically in the world on chain. And certainly the one that has been kind of continued and built the most and evolved the most since those days. Today it's really focused around enabling zero knowledge in a way that's a little different than sort of the narratives around ZK is just a way to scale Ethereum, and the things that like ZK Sync and Scroll and all of them are doing, which are great and valuable as well. But the idea is that zero knowledge can add, quote unquote, privacy features to a lot that's happening on chain. And when we say that, we're not talking about like hiding transactions between you and me. We're talking about, the types of applications that previously really weren't possible to either do on chain or entirely on chain. Anything that includes, shuffling, anything that includes fog of war, anything that includes maybe, regulatory compliant dark pool trading, escrow, where not everything necessarily needs to be revealed until a certain point, random number generation that's actually secure, and so forth and so on. And there's obviously a lot of implications for things like, identification for voting, for all of those sorts of things as well. So, we've been building for a long, long time here. And, I think that now we're really able to get to the point where we've got the knowledge and the history to be on the cutting edge of kind of that next generation of dApps that we're starting to see kind of pile up in that space.
Okay, cool. And what about let's touch a bit on your involvement with ApeChain in a bit, but I'm super fascinated by all the use cases you mentioned, specifically around lottery and random number generation, which we'll get into hopefully when Electric joins, and escrow. I mean, one thing that I'm dying to see on chain is like what I have with my landlord, which is some sort of a bank guarantee that my wife had to take 3 weeks to go and sign and list and hustle to put our money aside so that the landlord has it in case we run away. Now, if you can get that on chain with complete with privacy between the parties and some sort of a multi-sig that you can only be spent, in a certain under certain conditions, and then I can earn yield interest on that money while it's just sitting there. It still serves as some sort of a guarantee, a surety, but then I have that extra. So that's kind of incredible use case. And what about yourself? How long have you been in the space? Like, what are you, what kind of background, are you from more developer side? Did you come about to the space from a DJ side? Like, what brought you into this wacky world of magic internet money?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a circuitous route. I have a long time background in kind of cutting edge tech. Um, I had worked in STEM tech for a long time. I worked in 3D printing for a long time as well. Um, I had always worked from uh, either the marketing side or the product marketing side or the business development side, sort of over time, and the sales side for a little bit as well. But, I was always sort of on that kind of cutting edge. And then I kind of went away from it for a little while and I ran a marketing agency for about 8 years or so. And that was mostly with like consumer packaged goods, coffee, wine, watches, shoes, all that kind of stuff. Um, and at some point, even though it was successful and we were doing great, I really missed, being in tech. And I had been in crypto, really kind of a little bit since the early days of Bitcoin, but really from the early days of Ethereum. And what really kind of got me more and more interested was actually crypto kitties, and just kind of the possibilities around that. Um, and I had started to do consulting for a number of NFT projects, for a couple of protocols. Horizen was a company that I was consulting for as well. And essentially the time had come where I was ready to kind of leave and get bought out from my marketing agency, and my plan was just to kind of take a little bit of time off and figure out what I was going to do next. And around the same time, Horizen Labs had asked, "Hey, do you want to come and be here full time and help us?" And I said, "Well, I might as well." And the rest, I guess, is history. And kind of I've been in ever since. But yeah, I would say that a lot of it is from just sort of a general kind of long time stance as an early adopter and as somebody who's always interested in kind of working and evangelizing the next thing. And that always drew me to it. And then, yeah, crypto kitties, the hook for me.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to CryptoKitties. Like, can you buy them on Magic Eden? Like, is that available? What's the story with that? But I'm very curious about your journey from marketing in Web 2 world, sort of not even Web 2, like the RWA, like physical things and brands, and how do you feel that translates in the Web 3 context?
I think that it's it's a little twofold, right? One thing is that when you're talking about physical brands, you're always talking about product market fit. And I think that when you're talking about Web3, people get kind of caught up in trying to translate that over and saying, well, we've got to come out with a strong product market fit. But the problem is that, when you're talking about, a coffee brand, right? Coffee as a product exists and is there and, is in the messaging, but it's built, right? We
Yeah,
know what it is, and you're figuring out how are you distributing it. Whereas in Web3, there's a lot of stuff, and I think that this was especially true in sort of the last bull cycle, where there are good ideas and there are things that have product market fit, but the tech hasn't really caught up yet at that point, or it's not really ready for mass adoption. Um, I think that that's something that, as an industry, we struggled with for a long time. I think that at some point, people just said, well, it is what it is. It's experimental. And we're going to just start to kind of put it out there. And I think that was much healthier, honestly, right? And see kind of what the reaction is and what people are going to do as they're using it. And now, obviously, I think the tech has caught up to a much more significant degree. I mean, the things that people have been building over the last few years that a lot more people are going to discover over the next couple of weeks and months and hopefully years, I think are in a much stronger place, and we can kind of have some of those more traditional discussions. But, I think that the bigger learning wasn't even so much from like that kind of stuff. It was more from kind of days in 3D printing, where it's like you're kind of struggling to find adoption at first. And then at some point, you just have to kind of put things out there, and you start to realize that it doesn't need to be designated for people what they're going to use this for. If you put a technology that's incredible and different and can help a lot of people out into the world, people are going to build with it and they're going to figure it out. And so a little bit of it is kind of just that comfort in letting people come to you.
Yeah, I definitely hear you about the fact that sometimes we write checks that our dev team can't cash. You we've lost Spence on the video, but I'm sure he
I'm
has.
still here. I just have to get up
He's
for
still.
1 second.
So I'm definitely sometimes people are busy. The game here is how to sell the announcement of the announcement, not the actual product itself. So there's definitely some getting used to if you're coming from a marketing. I came from more data science and more left brain side of the game before I started my career in blockchain. So everything I've learned about marketing has been in the crypto space. I've obviously touched on areas of non-crypto related marketing, but it's interesting to see it through, see how marketing from a lens of someone who did it at a high level, outside of crypto. And when you get your back on camera, I'd like to, kind of dive into Ape Chain and your involvement over there, as well as some of those use cases that you mentioned that you're excited to see happening.
Yeah, and so Ape Chain, Ape Chain is an interesting case. It's a little different than a lot of what we do with Horizen Labs, right? And the background there is when ApeCoin was launched at the time, Horizen Labs did a lot of token advisory. It's not something that we do any longer. But as a result, we were involved with the technical, launch of ApeCoin at the time and have been kind of a long-term stakeholder in that ecosystem. And, that was one where, if you've been following, Yuga Labs and sort of the ape community for years, there was really a need to have a place that wasn't the Ethereum mainnet to be able to do things. And, that was a conversation that had come up time and time again. But the issue was that really during the last cycle, the alternatives to Ethereum were mostly, the big alt L1s, and things like Avalanche, right? And Polygon was around, but it was, it wasn't as, even though it was kind of at the cutting edge and sort of predicted the future of L2s, I don't think it was kind of at the level that it is today when those conversations were happening. And for the ape community, it was always really important to be Ethereum aligned. So there just wasn't really the place to kind of do the things that they wanted to do. And then, about a year ago or so, these things were coming up again because there were still, releases kind of coming out that were essentially breaking the Ethereum mainnet. There were kind of not great experiences. It was really difficult to do things around, other side and metaverse and kind of fulfill on a lot of those promises. And so, the discussions kind of bubbled up again, and a lot of different, major L2s essentially had thrown their hat into the ring and said, hey, we think that Ape Chain should be built here. And that included Polygon, that included Optimism, that included ZK Sync. And, we had gotten together and talked with the team at Arbitrum and Off-Chain Labs and had said, hey, Arbitrum and Arbitrum Tech probably makes the most sense for this. It's the best, most full-featured tech that works. It worked at the time and still works, I believe, right now, to the greatest degree of any of those options. It includes sort of the most future-proof and best future roadmap, and it would allow the ape community to do things that were really important to them, like use ApeCoin as gas, like keep complete control of their governance and be able to do the things that they wanted to do there. And so, we worked with that team and went through the governance and, the ape improvement process or AIP process over there, waged sort of like a months long campaign. And happily, we're able to get out of that vote winning and have been kind of building it ever since. But Ape Chain, it's a consumer crypto play in a lot of ways, and it's something that has been really a joy to work on from my standpoint. In terms of something that with a lot of Horizen, with a lot of ZK Verify, which I know we haven't talked about, which is another kind of product that Horizen Labs has worked on. A lot of that stuff will get adoption, but it's still, cutting edge tech. And so with ApeChain, it has been nice to be able to really work on something that's getting adoption already, where everything is kind of there. And it's really just a matter of onboarding people and watching the cool stuff that's getting built, on there.
Yeah, definitely a consumer play. I think I think it's the Ape brand managed to get enough runway, enough kind of like mind share runway in the last cycle to push it through, and it's I think emerging as a strong united community. And the narrative is right now that every community needs its own chain. Every exchange is launching its own chain. Every community, so everyone wants to settle. You want to kind of get that value extraction of fees and not have it, get some, trickle out somewhere else to Ethereum or any other chain. So I thought it's very natural, and it's great to see you pushing in that respect. And you mentioned ZK Verify. Is that a complementary product to ApeChain? Is that something completely different? And how, what kind of use cases are you guys seeing being built out around the ZK Verify feature?
Yeah, the answer is actually both, in a lot of ways. It's so with Horizen, there are essentially two sides on the product side. There's Horizen 2.0 that we're building, for context, and Horizen 2.0 is its own EVM that is really going to sit as a home for ZK apps and a really ZK app centered ecosystem. There are a lot of people and going to be a lot of people who want to build within a ZK app specific ecosystem, but there are also a lot of people who want to build where they want to build, whether that be on ApeChain, whether that be on Arbitrum, whether that be on Ethereum, whether that be somewhere else. What ZK Verify allows you to do is build ZK apps and ZK use cases anywhere and be able to access sort of the broadest, most cutting edge connection of ZK proofs. That's important because unlike the Ethereum mainnet or on a lot of other, L2s, L3s, what have you, you can send proofs today, but they're really limited. I won't get into a whole big thing about elliptic curves and all of that, but the long and short of it is that there are very few types of ZK proofs that you can use, and they're relatively expensive unless you're kind of using something external. And the external things traditionally haven't really existed. So ZK Verify plugs into ApeChain already, right? On testnet, and once it gets to mainnet, it will plug in there as well. ZK Verify gets to mainnet. ApeChain's already on mainnet, and it allows you to basically build ZK apps instantly anywhere. There's no need to build a custom verifier. There's no need to find some sort of, sort of handcrafted workaround solution. If you want to build a fog of war game, if you want to build a raffle, right? you can do that, and it will work. So, that's one thing where it really will kind of drive things forward and just open up these enormous amount of use cases that just previously weren't possible.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you kind of, I understood a bit of elliptic curve. Like back in the day, I did a book called like a Programming Bitcoin by Jimmy Song. So
Mhm.
over there, he explains the concept of an elliptic curve. But to get like honesty, like ZK technology is one of the more challenging disciplines, in the world ever. So it's a very complex to try to understand exactly the nuances of elliptic curve. But what you're saying is that you're allowing people to utilize them on chain in a much cheaper way, much faster way, and that allows essentially, can maybe speak to what a ZK proof actually is, and how someone would use it, how someone would use it. By someone, I mean a dApp or a new chain launching, or a user, how they would kind of come into contact with the ZK proof.
Yeah, and so the way that I usually like to explain it is, say you and I are playing poker, right? And if you and I wanted to play poker today and have it entirely on chain, that would be difficult, right? Because, basically I would have 5 cards and you would have 5 cards. And one of the things that's great about blockchain is that everything is transparent. And so we would both be sitting there with our cards face up and knowing exactly what each of us had, and there would be no game to play. If I'm sending this instead through essentially a ZK proof, what I'm saying to you is, hey, I'm not going to show you the cards. I'm going to show the verifier the cards, and it will then tell you, hey, Spencer has 5 cards. They're 5 legitimate cards. They can be revealed to you at some point, but all you need to know is that he's got 5 cards, and you don't need to know exactly the types of cards that he has, but you can trust this because we've run it against our sort of methods of being able to verify and know that that's the case. And so, essentially what it means is that anything where there's information that needs, to be confirmed, needs to be verified, but doesn't need to be exposed to all parties, or shouldn't be, or can't be exposed to all parties, the ZK proof solves for that.
Yes, for sure. And so the poker hand is an incredible way to explain it. And what about for scale? Like, let me try and understand. That's for if you want to use a ZK proof to keep information private, to encrypt information. How would I use a ZK proof if I want to be able to increase the number of transactions that I can make on my chain?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, ZK Verify, to be clear, isn't super focused on the scalability, aspect in that way. Not because it can't be, it can be, but just because there are a lot of other really great solutions for that too. But a lot of it really has to do with bundling of transactions securely, right, without exposing those transactions to everybody else involved. For example, in a sequencer block. I think is really, really important. I think it also allows for, compression and scalability in a way where, I don't have to send an attestation of every individual transaction within that block. I can prove that all of those transactions happened on my chain before sort of sending them upwards in a roll-up situation. And so that allows for, enormous block size savings. It allows for enormous cost savings, speed savings, things like that at the simplest level.
Yeah, so it's about bundling up transactions, and having a way to submit a proof of those transactions without revealing what information was in those transactions in the first place.
Yep.
That's kind of the idea. That's very cool. So I want to kind of move into more of the use cases. We mentioned raffles, and specifically around, the ape chain raffle that the guys, Trailblaze and Horizen was, and DK Verify sort of work together. Maybe run me through that from from your side, like what kind of usage did DK Verify tech bring, how do you see the raffle sort of landscape? Because everyone wants to gamble now. That's the meta right now. Everyone is looking to speculate. Everyone's looking to have a roll of the dice, and if people, it's not like gambling in a Web 2 style where you just
Yeah.
get a scratch card and want to win. There's a social element. There's a a fun DJing element to it as well. So maybe give us a glimpse into your mind and how you see kind of ZK raffles going forward.
Yeah. So, this is sort of a long-standing trust issue, right? Where when you're talking about a raffle and you're talking about a randomly picked winner, right? And you're doing that through like a random number generator. Um, it's really hard, or it has been really hard on a number of cases previously. One, it's been hard to prove that there's no front running. Two, it's been hard to prove that a number or a winner was picked in a fair way, right? And without those things, it's been really hard, for example, to create something that could be regulatory compliant. Which is a weird thing to say about raffles, but raffles do need to be like that in a lot of places in the world, right? It's been hard to say, hey, this is totally fair. You can trust this. This is legitimate, and to be able to do that in a way that can also match sort of any speed needs that need to happen. So to be able to do that continuously. Where something like ZK Verify steps in is that you can go ahead and you can do a raffle like that. And you can say, hey, this raffle has happened. And if you want to go and you want to check on it, you can see that this was completely on the up and up. A winner was chosen fairly. There's been, no way that somebody could have kind of done a runaround around this. You can see when the number was generated. You can see how it was generated. You can see, how the winner was chosen. Sort of, it's one of these funny things because we talk about privacy, but really this is ZK tech being used for transparency in a lot of ways. And then, which also kind of just fits into the DNA of blockchain, because I think that originally there was a lot of talk about like, well, crypto provides privacy when really, and this, what it does is it provides transparency. So
yeah, you're getting transparency without giving up the privacy, so you can
right.
that there's some sort of an outcome at play here, but you don't need to know the hands of the bettors or the amount that they bet. You can keep that private.
Right, it's a secure transparency, whatever you want to call it, but I think that that's a really important thing. And there are other associated things that we're seeing kind of popping up, where it's anytime that you're using a method like that to match things, to match winners, to match players. Pixel Vault, which is a great company with Battle Plan on Ape Chain, is using ZK Verify for player matching. Player matching is something that's also really tough in lobbies. I'm not going to call anybody out, but there was a big issue with this with other, games and really strong games and game companies where, being able to say, hey, things aren't being messed with. You're not just going to be matched with, a player well above your levels. This is going to be fair, and we can prove that it's fair. And we can do the matching in such a way where people can't go and sort of, cherry pick and hunt for weaker players on purpose is really important. So, I think all of these things, and like raffles especially, I love raffles as a use case for crypto. I love lotteries as a use case for crypto. There are these things where they're quote unquote simple use cases, but they're great examples of where the technology has progressed to, because there are things that just, as simple, quote unquote, as they seem, they weren't really possible. I don't even think like a year ago, honestly. And they're going to become primitives in the same way that, like, V2 or V3, AMM is a primitive today. And people are going to be able to build stuff around them now, and that's super exciting.
Yeah, I hear you about lotteries. It's definitely one of the more obvious use cases. Maybe talk a little bit about the use case that, the showcase that you had with Trailblaze on the Ape Coin, that raffle. Like, how did it, how did it go from your point of view, and what do you think comes next?
Yeah, absolutely. And so with Monkey Raffle and Trailblaze, there's something that obviously, got a lot of pickup, which was great, right? I think that it's one of those things where, from a user end, people are really excited about it. And at the same time, it's really beautiful as a use case, because it's not sort of a quote unquote like gigabrain DeFi use case. And I love gigabrain DeFi, and I'm DeFi crazed, but like, it's something that people are able to grasp onto. You're not saying, you don't have to explain it beyond the fact that, hey, this is something that we know people are going to be interested in. This is something that is going to be able to be run. And I think Trailblaze obviously did a great job with it. And, people can go and they can interact with it very easily. And it solves sort of this other problem too, which is, I think that there are a lot of people who are, especially now as we head into the cycle, they're going to be really interested in using crypto. And we can go and we can talk to them until our faces turn blue about, different types of anything from, options to leverage trading to, different, yield modes and farming and incentive, and all this kind of stuff. But for a lot of the world, the way that we're going to bring on those next users is saying like, oh, this is also just a really easy way to be able to do things like continuous raffles, right? To be able to do things, like I said, like continuous card games. It's and when I talk about it as a primitive, and I think that things like, Monkey Raffle and kind of what was done there can be primitives, it's because they become things that are easily accessible, that we can build other things around, and that are really, really solid and strong entry points.
Yeah, for sure. I think, my mind was racing off when I saw that.
And I'm still here, by the way, again.
Yeah, when I saw the sort of the possibilities of what you can do with the lottery, like at the end of the day, there's a lot of things in the crypto space that are, done in bulk. So whether it's these little giveaways or these little airdrops, or like, there's a lot of things that, especially something like airdrops or giveaways, like $5 giveaways, like, for some people they'll participate in that, but I think something more interesting is in all these kind of bulk activities that we do to get usage, to get the word out, like referral programs, whatever. What if you can add a gamified element of lottery where you can participate in that, and then you're giving up some upside because you might not win the giveaway, you might not get the $5, but by doing that, you're vastly increasing the chance of what you can win. One person, the top three referrers will win X amount of money instead of just everyone will get $2, $3, $4, $5. So that's kind of where I see lottery sort of playing a role in tokenomics, where you have, you kind of let people take on some more risk for more reward, which is what everyone in crypto wants to do anyway. Just kind of up that leverage. The risk taking is going to go to the moon. So why not extend that to more, to the ongoing tokenomic churning, like staking lottery, like where you're staking reward each month or each block get, or there's a lottery, to kind of decide who gets paid staking rewards. And if you participate in the lottery, then you give up, you potentially give up your rewards that go into this lottery pool. So there's a lot of ways that I think we can add that unpredictability element that people love about meme coins, about trading cults, and add them into like day-to-day tokenomics and other sort of economic activities to make it more casino like. So that's kind of why I think lotteries are, they could be big. It's not just, again, it's not just like filling out a scratch card lottery. There's a lot of user in behavior and engagement and gamification that you can build using lottery as a fulcrum to get those desired results.
Yeah, no, and I think it's interesting, and yeah, exactly what you're saying, right? Is that it opens up these opportunities where, like you said, if I'm doing an NFT collection, I don't necessarily have to just promote it via airdropping a chunk of my collection. It makes it easier where I can say, hey, the whitelist is for a giveaway. And, this giveaway, it's not just going to go to some insider, and there's not going to be that concern around it. And it gets people more invested and more bought in, and it creates more excitement around it. And we were talking a little bit about like traditional marketing before. It opens up some of those traditional marketing channels, to that degree. So it's super exciting from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I want to kind of go towards a very important topic, and this is the one around altcoins, around the cycle. Like, how do you see yourself? You said you hear from the early days of Ethereum, so you've seen three cycles now. Like, when do you think, first of all, is it a guarantee that the cycle will make its way to the tail, right, to all the altcoins? Because the last year, in 2024, we've seen, and I'm not just talking about meme coins on Pump Fund like every 2 seconds, like just even in the utility space, we've seen this kind of boom in token being launched against a VC climate. If you map the VC funds flowing into the Web3 space against the number of tokens launched, you'll see a massive discrepancy this year where token launches are just taking off, and VC funding hasn't really picked up. It hasn't really got back to its 2021 high.
Mm.
So there's obviously a lot of consternation in the more lower cap alts. Do you think that the cycle is going to play out in a way that it has before, where we see Bitcoin around, then we see Ethereum, Solana, the leaders follow, and then the low caps get to eat? Or is there something else happening fundamentally here?
Yeah, no, I think it's the same story as always. I don't think there's necessarily a need to overthink it. I think that we'll go through the cycles, right? I think we'll have that alt season. I think, like, this is not investment advice, but I think it'll probably melt faces. Would be the technical term for it. As it comes, I think Ethereum is starting to pick up, obviously, over the last couple of days here. I think that Bitcoin remains this, amazing entryway for a lot of people. But people are going to go down the similar story where they get Bitcoin. And now, yes, maybe Bitcoin will be able to capture more of the value than it was able to before because there are Bitcoin L2s and there are more to do. But, people are going to go down that journey, which is like, man, I'm learning all about crypto and I really want to do this, this, and this. And, that's not stuff that I can necessarily do on Bitcoin. Is there a place that I can do that? Oh, I can do that on Ethereum. I can do that on Solana, or other people are going to do that there. And, they'll continue to kind of go down that sort of, I don't know if I want to call it religious path, but essentially religious path, right, around it. I think that it absolutely will happen. I think that one of the big things now is that in the last cycle, there were a lot of either alternate, monolithic L1s, sort of the start of a lot of the L2s off of Ethereum, things like that, but they weren't at the place where they were today, right?
Yeah.
There was really no optimism as OP stands, no base, right? There was no Arbitrum. There was no, ZK Stink or Starknet, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And, I think that what is going to happen is that people are going to either get into it or get back into it. They're going to realize, like, oh, the stuff is here. It really does work now, to a much, much greater degree than it did last time around. And that part of the cycle will absolutely pick up. And, the NFT portion of the cycle will pick up. It's already picked up on Ape Chain, but which makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
I've chain's been popping that new chain flavor. I was watching it, and
Yeah.
then a few collections blew up there. Like I'm as you see Bitcoin ecosystem. So I try, and I realize that gives me some sort of an edge because when I go to non-Bitcoin ecosystems, like I just get wrecked every second. Like Solana means like it's just so easy to get wrecked there, and like all my kind of my edge, or if you can call it that. I think no one really has an edge except for the by CZ, or like that edge comes from kind of being in 24/7 in one ecosystem, and like you get to the point where you can identify almost subliminally the most minute little changes in sentiment going this way
Mhm.
or that way, and that allows you to position. But if you're not like living, breathing in it, like it's very hard to identify the trends in time before they kick off, because a lot of things in our space are like cool ironically, and then like you wanna understand the inside jokes, the double entendres, the irony, and if you're not living, breathing 24/7, the little who's against who's, the little like Twitter beefs, like if you're not following that, like you don't really have the edge when it comes to understanding cults and stuff. So that's at least where I think. So that we coming to the end of our time, Spencer. I've had a epic time chatting to you, and obviously we're gonna keep following you and seeing where
Yeah.
ZK Verify goes and the ape chain uh, ecosystem, how that explodes. I'm just curious as to your 2025 this time next. Like we're kind of entering a new year and about to sum up this kind of 2024, what would you sum it up kind of in one word, the last 12 months of, of crypto, Bitcoin, and everything in between?
Yeah, I mean, I think that 2024 has been kind of a year of building, obviously. Um, I think that it's been a year where, a lot of people have started to get excited. There's been this huge vibe shift. And the vibe shift didn't just happen this week, within people who work in this world. I think that there's been a feeling that we've been on the cusp of something big for a number of months now. And I think that 2025 is kind of the year where we start to really welcome people in. I think mass adoption is a tricky word and a tricky subject, but it feels like we really are on the cusp of finally kind of getting that mass adoption. Certainly, we're getting that mass acceptance that needs to happen first. But I think that 2024 was a year of building and getting the show set up and getting ready for the future. And you started this chat, talking about validation, and I think that 2025 is going to be really a year of validation for the entire industry.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I see it the same way. Before I close, I want to mention our sponsors. You can see their logo over there, DLT Law, your number one source for all things crypto regulation, legal, your partners in building responsibly. Now, I need to have these guys again. They really, friends of mine, lawyers, and I think crypto is going to be doing a complete 180. And I'm not talking about Bitcoin now, the strategic reserve. I'm going to put that aside. That's obviously the biggest news out of the last couple months, out of the last years. The US has moved to build a Bitcoin strategic reserve that was confirmed with the Trump winning the elections. I'm talking about what's going to happen to the industry, the downstream effects of Trump putting in friendly regulators, friendly senators winning their races that are pro crypto in the US. And for me, as someone outside the US, and I've worked in the space for a while, and you see every company that you're dealing with. That every company, every DApp you try to use is somehow blocked to US residents, and US is excluded from this whole, unless they VPN, are excluded from this whole ecosystem, to a world where the US is going to be wide open for business, and that's the narrative I'm watching out for the most in 2025. Just like the speed at which things actually change in the US with regards to being open to crypto, the speed at which dApps start allowing US residents to trade over there, to farm over there, whatever, and the speed and the speed at which through US based companies start, we start seeing token generation events for companies that might have been a little bit more hesitant in the past. So I'm definitely watching out for that. That
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to happen quickly, and I think that what people might not realize is that a lot of that it's not just about how the presidential election went. There are groups in the U.S. like the Blockchain Association, which I like to shout out at every opportunity because they do a ton of work on that front. Where this is the most pro crypto Congress by far that we've ever had, but it's not just Republicans, right? I sat in a room maybe a year and a half ago, and it was like, with Blockchain Association folks, and they were showing the stats on it. Crypto is has wide bipartisan support in the United States. And the things that were being pushed and the way that regulation was done, that was actually the minority position, right? That was never something that was broadly popular here. And so now, they've done a great job. There's an enormous and active lobbying effort, here. And I think that you're going to see things change pretty quickly. And you're going to see the U.S. kind of get in line with what the rest of the world has realized. And I think like in the United States, it's been sort of an anomaly because, it's like on most things, the rules and regulations and things like that around tech have always been very growth focused, maybe even, more so, right? And that has been one area where there's just been kind of hesitancy and forces against it. And I think that that's going to start to change really quickly here, which is exciting. I think it's exciting.
Yeah,
I think that those
definitely.
days of like random geo blocking and people being scared of random enforcement actions, I mean, fingers crossed, hopefully are over.
Yeah, hopefully next time we talk, it's a completely different landscape for builders, especially those in the US that have been chased and hounded for the last couple of years. Spencer, thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your energy, and for all you do for the space. And we will catch you soon. Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone, for tuning in.
this has been great. Thanks so
And
much.
this is the Breakfast Show. We'll see you next week.
Bye.